So, today I'm going to teach you about Pokemon fundamentals. More importantly, the stats tab and what you need to know to make pretty much a good Pokemon in what I would describe as the standard Pokemon. Okay. So, if you go to your Pokemon in particular, well, let's get one thing straight, right? There's a lot to consider, but you obviously have HP, P attack, P defense, SP attack, SP defense, speed, nature, and then ability. Obviously, there's you know different abilities depending on the Pokemon. The main thing that you want to know here is what each a Pokemon has can also be adjusted with their effort value. So primarily, certain individual types of Pokemon are going to have different types of bonuses that are going to be beneficial to their particular Pokemon type. That is to say, not all Pokemon are made equal. There are going to be varying degrees of HP, attack, special defense. Obviously, some Pokemon, depending on their level, are going to be better than others. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of don't pay enough attention to is actually nature. Think of nature as kind of like a multiplier, okay? In the sense that the way nature is going to work is basically if you go into the evolve tab, right? And let's say, for example, I want to awaken and adjust different types of stats. Before you ever make any of these kind of decisions on like, well, I want to evolve it, I want to awaken it, I want to do all that, I recommend you actually pay very close attention to a couple of things. Mainly the individual value and the species value. And then, of course, as you can see in the case of Bashful, it's interesting in that you can actually see what that is going to mean in the context of that particular Pokemon. That is to say that, if let's say you do, I don't know, a fusion, for example, you can actually fuse different Pokemon together and do a fusion with another pet Pokemon and change their nature. And that nature is going to determine what type of basically stat bonuses they're going to get. And when I say multiplayer, that's what I mean. Like nature is going to adjust the type of stat it's going to modify for that Pokemon. And some Pokemon will benefit from, say, like an increase in speed, for example, or some other Pokemon may benefit from an increase in special attack. Now, how do you know what nature you should use is really going to be dependent on what you plan to use that Pokemon for and how you plan to actually attack it. And again, you can see in here, you can, I mean, quite literally, you can swap out intimacy, you can swap out the Pokedex inheritance, you can even swap out the growth of that Pokemon. You can even change hyper training. I mean, there's even exchanges between two different Pokemon. I mean, you've got a lot of different choices here. And this all goes back to like, well, in the case of study, for example, this is the Pokedex. In the case of the ability value, and actually like, say like if I wanted to redeem and upgrade an effort value for, say, like Tyranitar, all right? Obviously, a very high attack is going to be useful, but special attack versus special defense, you may be thinking like, well, how do I know what that is going to be used in? And this all kind of goes back to like looking at the actual ability, looking at both the power, the accuracy, what type of move it is also going to matter because, if let's say you're hitting dark on something, you want to have kind of how do you say, if you didn't already know this, that, obviously different types of Pokemon are more effective or not effective depending on the type of Pokemon you're against. Basic bottom line is if you don't know what Pokemon beats what Pokemon, that's where it starts. Okay, but then the actual type is also another factor you need to pay attention to, because you'll notice that type SP versus type physical is also going to be going back to your P attack versus your SP attack. That's the difference in how those are going to be applied, So now you kind of have an idea of like, oh, okay, so if I use an SP attack like Dark Pulse, it's going to pull from SP attack of 752. But simultaneously, if I was to use, say, the Fizz type, well, then it's now using P attack. And obviously, in the case of Tyranitar, his P attack moves are higher, but his SP attack moves are lower. So if I wanted to, say, make Tyranitar a little bit more beneficial for me, I might increase his P attack and his SP attack to make him more better for that type of scenario. There is obviously the accuracy of the ability itself, and obviously the higher the accuracy, the better or more likely it is to actually succeed. Of course, there is one other factor that you have to kind of keep in mind here and that's that, the type bonus is also something else that you can adjust here. That is to say that you can actually adjust also, so like I said, there's a lot of different places in here that you can, like the type bonus of say like, whether or not they're this or that. I mean, you got so many different. You can even get medal bonuses, badge bonuses, and such, or Pokedex bonuses. And if you go into the more ability value here, this gives you an idea of what the global value is in terms of where, like for example, what the maximums are in terms of like if you didn't already know, it's when the cultivation level is higher than the minimum level, it'll do the display value of the cultivation attribute of the Pokemon. I mean, so in a way, you can kind of get an idea of like where that Pokemon's going to reside in terms of the long game, and of course, then you may also be wondering, well, hey, hold on a minute. There's skins? Yeah, that's a thing. You can actually change skins, and then you can. So this game's got a lot of different levels to it. You can actually throw on, like, say, for example, like different items that you want to attach to them. So, like in the case of like the Sandrage Orb, the move's power on rock and dark types will be enhanced by 30%. If carried by a Tyranitar, the Demega accused by fighting will be reduced by 50%. Obviously, in this particular case, yeah, it'd be advantageous to attach something like that on there. You can also add berries. This is common. So if you wanted to actually like, heal mid-battle, this is what these are for. So you can attach them to your Pokemon to get yourself a little bit of an edge in the middle of a battle for any reason. Now you may be wondering, like, as far as what the power is, this determines like where you're kind of standing across the board, like whether or not your rune level's low, growth, and so on. These are all different factors that you can control on the power level of that individual Pokemon. So with everything that I've told you, now I know it sounds complicated, but it's really not. If let's say we look at somebody like Rayquaza, for example. Okay, you notice that there's a considerably different set of abilities going on here. Like, if you ever didn't know, you can just tap here and it'll tell you what it's weak against and what its immunity is and what it's resistant to. And that's handy because, like, if you're not aware of these things, I mean, you can always go down and look. Let's say, for example, we look at Pikachu. Go to the details tab and hit electric. It'll tell you it's weak position is against ground, but it's resisting flying, steel, and electric. So it gives you kind of an idea of how to play it. Now, like in the case of normal, it's weak against fighting. It's immune to ghosts. If you look at like the psychic, for example, it's resistant against fighting and psychics, but it's weak against bugs, ghosts, and darks. If you were to look at, say, like Ho-Ho, for example, which is another fire flying Pokemon, okay, it's got a 2x on weakness against, say, like rock. It's got a resistance of 2x against bug, but it's immune to ground, and it's got a 2x on grass. So, I mean, again, it kind of gives you an idea of like where to pay attention to as far as your actual individual abilities and everything. Again, I guess about the only other thing that would matter, and again, it varies depending on the Pokemon, in terms of what you have. Like, for example, if you wanted to change their ability, for example, you can change ability to, say if you want them to use, a different value of, like, I don't know, for example, like you were looking how like Sandstorm is used in the case of Tyranitar. When you've got options in terms of abilities too, like you can replace abilities if you want to. All you have to do is what we get. Basically, if you go into your bag, you actually have technical machines, and these are basically the individual abilities. And from in here, you can actually choose to either dismantle it and use it for, say something else later down the road, or you can use it to train it in your own Pokemon. But pretty much north of, anything that I've discussed so far, I would say about the only other mechanics here that are kind of handy to know. And it comes in handy, and it's all really pretty straightforward, but I feel like a lot of the time it kind of goes on to the wayside. But like, you can save a lot of these in terms of effort value, and you can use these interchangeably. So like, if for example, let's say you want to, I don't know, for some reason you're working on a Pokemon and then you decide, you know what, I just don't want to work on this Pokemon anymore. I want to go use a new Pokemon, or I want to adjust the effort value for a different Pokemon for whatever reason, right? And this varies from time to time. It just depends on what Pokemon you're working on at the time. But like in the case of say like Mewtwo, for example, or any other Pokemon that I may have at my disposal, you can always go to the details tab and go over and actually check the ability value, and you can see whether or not you had an effort value tied to them. I'm going to see if I can actually find an example. Well, you know what? Just for the sake of argument, let me just go ahead and do it on one that I've already got. So, like, for example, if I went into Rayquaza here, went into the ability value, and let's say instead of, maybe I just want to work on his speed, or maybe I want to work on his, defense, I can go in there and redeem and say, I just want to go ahead and max out the amount of effort value. Okay, so now I've got maximum effort value added. I can now turn around and I can say, okay, I want to increase this defense. So I'm going to go ahead and add it. And then once I've added it, and say I want to turn around and reset it, you can reset the effort value for diamonds, or you can get a diamond recycle card and it'll recycle all of them. So, you have options as far as like how you want to go about adjusting effort value. So you're not having to like feel completely locked into it. Obviously, yes, you do have to spend a little bit to get, get these fixes, but a lot of gyms in this game can be earned free to play. You don't really have to be like super crazy one way or the other. Really about the only other thing that I would suggest as far as Pokemon is concerned is just have a really well thought out roster. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll pick the very first Pokemon, and depending on the type of battled Pokemon you're up against, right? Like if you know you're going to be fighting a bunch of water types, you want to use from left to right which Pokemon you think, so basically what I'm saying is you can actually tap here and change your lineups, within here, and you can actually adjust and even go in so far as to looking at different analysis of different types of bonuses and such that, let's say if you wanted to adjust this setting, you can name this team and you can even create different lineups even. So like maybe for some reason, this lineup's not working, I need to adjust. There are ways to actually go about and watch, say like, for example, if I go up to, I don't know, if I go to adventure here, we'll go ahead and pick these up here. And that's another thing too, is, you just pick up all the items that you get every day. But one of the things that it can tell you is you can actually see, like, for example, if I tap this and let's say I'm struggling and I don't know what team lineup somebody used to fight this, you can actually go to recommended array, and recommended array will actually tell you what someone else used to beat that particular team. So you've got plenty of options as far as if you're just struggling to figure out like what to do. That's really kind of gives you an idea of what to plan for, what to build around, and how to actually go about approaching those missions. But again, just like everything in Pokemon, all of that takes time and energy, and you can build better and worse teams just depending on how you go about planning those things out. But with any logic behind anything, obviously every day it's going to matter if you go to the gachapon and get yourself a free Pokemon. And then, of course, you can always get some raffle tickets from time to time. It's like there we got Ice Punch, we got Igglybuff, got some shards for like Kyogre and maybe even a couple of different types of Pokemon. It's all nice. But again, like everything, it's a matter of consistency, really, when it comes to these kind of games. Especially if you want to get ahead, you can spend your heart's content. And again, check the description below if you would like to try out this game, if you've never watched this before. Because the game is going to be in the description, so you're happy to come and download it and play it with me if you'd like. Again, my name on here is, I'm actually in Torracat 553. My name's Dakanoth. I haven't been in an alliance yet, or a club, that is, but I've considered it. If you guys would like to play with me, though, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And needless to say, I'll see you guys next time.